Hey guys, it's me again, Kalliopi, with a new watercolor tutorial, finally. But before we get started, I would like to let you know that me and Stadla have collaborated into creating 7 free art classes. And I am so proud of this project. I truly tried my best to show you some of my favorite techniques and get into depth for drawing with ink, like fine liners that you always see me use in my bullet journals, and of course, watercolors. There are topics like how to do dot shading, line sketching, and how to create floral illustrations, to using watercolors and earthy tones. So many things that I am sure you will find interesting and helpful. They are beginner friendly to intermediate and totally free. You can see all the classes through the link in the description box, and I cannot wait to see your creations. For today's video, I wanted to get into the mood for winter since it started to get cold here in Greece, and I also traveled to Frankfurt in Germany the past week and I saw so many beautiful trees and forests and I got really inspired. So I did my, usual Pinterest research to find a winter forest photos so I can get inspiration, and I find quite a few and I created a mix of these. As always, the paper I'm gonna use is the Artis cold pressed into an A5 size since I cut it in half, and the Mijello Mission watercolors. Today's painting is actually monochromatic. The color I chose is indigo blue, even though in this Mijello watercolor collection it seems like it's more close to black. But I promise you it has a tiny bit of blue in it. So if you don't have the exact color I will use, then you can always mix your blues with a tiny bit of brown and black and get the same color. Now that I am all prepared and I got my brushes and everything down, I am counting 1/4 of the paper from the bottom to keep wide for the ground. In my case it is 5 centimeters. And then very lightly I actually draw 2 lines in the center because I know I'm gonna have 2 main trees for the center focus. I did this just to have an overall idea of the space. It doesn't really matter right now. So step 1 was grabbing my big flat brush and wetting the paper all the top portion but not the ground. And then I slowly start to place my color, which is indigo blue. I know you might not see a lot of blue, but it is there. And start to create a really nice flat wash, going from darker to lighter as I go up. For the ground, I get a much lighter shade of my color because I added a lot more water, and I start to place my brush randomly across the ground, doing really not specific moves, just so I can create a texture, a very light, washy texture, leaving tiny spots of white to shine through. And of course, as with any kind of misty winter landscapes, I have to inform you that there will be a lot of layers. So if you think that you messed up in some way in this layer, don't worry at all because there will be so many more. And you will have your chance to create your perfect blend. Now, as you can see, I'm starting to place the first lines, the first trees. My paper is still a bit wet. And this is the very first layer of the forest and the trees, so it has to be like really far away and faded. So as you can see, then I took my big flat brush and started creating really simple lines going vertically and using the flat part of the brush, and then even again horizontally to blend everything together again, because you do want to have some lines showing through, but it's not like you want them to be out there. You want everything to be really blended and kind of foggy. I know it might seem like this is useless and like you're ruining whatever you have created before, but trust me, all those layers building up will actually achieve the winter look that we are going for. Also, I really love painting this type of landscapes because it takes out the fear of watercolors. When you are working with watercolors, you're so afraid that you're going to smudge your paint and your previous layer. But this whole point is to actually experiment and see that sometimes smudging all your layers together can give you a really beautiful look. And then I added a bit more of the indigo on the bottom to have a bit more gradient. And from this top view, you can clearly see that what we just did actually gave something. There is something already coming through the back. Now my paper is completely dry, and with my smaller brush and quite light color, because we're still on the back, we're still far away, we don't want to have a really intense indigo black version of our color. I start to randomly place some kind of leaves and shapes on the back, really easy, by just tapping and spreading and dragging my brush and just letting the brush and the color and the water do their job. And then slowly start adding lines again in the same color shade, which is pretty light still. Again, grabbing my big flat brush to blend everything out in case I feel like those lines are very specific and very detailed that we still don't want them to be, and really not being afraid to just kind of erase them. And a really nice tip is, after I'm done doing my horizontal blending, it is very nice in this case that we have the forest to do vertical blending, so you can drag the color upward and have your final brush strokes be vertical. Okay, now we have a new layer. As you can see, I went a little bit darker, not too much, but quite a bit darker, and basically repeated the same steps. I did some lines for trees and some random brush strokes for leaves and to create texture, and also remembering to grab my big flat brush to wet the bottom part and bring up some color, and also just do the whole fading thing again. In this moment, I should mention that yes, the paper you're using will play some role in this, and hopefully it can handle all these blending and layers, and this is why I really love arches. Also, I use my flat brush while having the hair of the brush be a little bit messy to go back to the ground and create even more texture by just tapping randomly with a really light wash of color. Now at this point I had my basic layout down with all my light and kind of medium values, but this is the part where I actually need to see my final darker values in order to start building the whole picture into coming together. Most people say that with watercolors you have to start light and then build up your darkness, but with watercolors sometimes I find that having the darkest value on the paper is also helpful. So this is me creating the darkest center trees of this painting, and the trick for these trees in the center, and generally the ones that are going to be a lot more visible, is that you have to give them some type of angle. Don't make them straight up. It's not gonna look very natural. So my first one was going a little bit to the left, and then the other one was going a little bit to the right to create this contrast, and also have some parts of them be a little bit more pointy or more geometric and harsh, and have little branches coming out of these spots. And now that I can actually see those two dark trees, I started adding more of my lighter ones around them. And also not forgetting the bottom part of the trees that meets the ground to have a bit of shadows going down the roots. So now it is all about starting to build up all the trees that is showing through this forest, always changing my values from darker to lighter and seeing how everything fits together, and also of course creating very tiny lines for really tiny branches, and even having light brushstrokes for leaves as we used before. So in this part I would suggest that you maybe pause this video and figure out how I have placed those 4 dark trees, because their placement and how they actually move into each other and going upwards is what makes this part look realistic and beautiful. And you might think that I am done with the whole blending and erasing what I have done, but nope, here I am again once more, wetting my paper and grabbing some color to fade some of the lines and just let them blend in for a more smooth transition. Always going upwards and vertical to go with the flow and the brushstrokes of the whole forest. Moving on, this is the part where I start to add my funnel black portion of the painting, which is on the left corner, and this actually reminds me a little bit of Bob Ross because I'm taking my flat brush and start to just place the brush kind of vertically and create, you know, the circular movement that you do with your hand to just create trees like you would do with oil or acrylics. But as my paint is still wet on the paper, I grab my thin brush and start to drag the wet paint so I can move it and create lines and break a little bit this strict shape that the bigger flat brush has created. And I am repeating everything until I get to the bottom. So this whole spot should be an image of a tree that is a lot closer and has leaves and also snow that we will create later on with white acrylic paint. And for the right part of the ground, I created a smaller bush type of plant with smaller strokes but the same kind of technique, using the fine brush to create lines and then going back with my flat brush to just blend them randomly. As you can see, I don't do anything specific, I just grab my brush and start tapping and dragging so I can have a few spots of white going through or just spreading the paint. And yeah, don't be mad at me, but here I am again, wetting my big brush and blending everything. I promise you, as you can see, this actually makes a difference. Also, I'm promising you this is the last time I think I'm doing it. Yeah, don't be mad at me. And after my paper is completely dry, I go with my darkest indigo black color and add my final touches. Those final brush strokes that will create the final textures. And here we are now with the big bad boy, the white acrylic, to add our snow. For the right part of the ground, I took the white as it was and start tapping and adding some snow. This is like super easy and basic. You don't actually have to create snow, but just the effect of it. So just tapping and placing some color on top of the black bush that we created before. Also, because the white was a bit too white, I mixed it with my indigo and created another shade, a much more grayish toned down white, and it made such a huge difference. It fitted so well. And once again, like Bob Ross with my flat brush, I just tapped it on top of the dark leaves and the brush did all the job. Adding final tiny details. The smaller the better, because it makes it look even more realistic than having huge white parts going around some of the trees and branches and just wherever I think it was needed. And we are actually done. So let's enjoy this tape peeling part. This was the tutorial, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. I cannot wait to see your recreations. Always come and join me at my Instagram account at Kalliopi Lyviaki, where I can see your drawings, and just follow me there for more. This original painting will be up on my Etsy shop if any of you would like to give it a home. It always blows my mind how much support you give me. And yeah, make sure to check out my 7 free art classes with Stadler and subscribe to my channel for more videos. Till next time, have a super duper day. Bye!